When my sister dragged my suitcase into the hallway, I thought it was another one of her tantrums. She had always been dramatic when she wanted something, louder, sharper, more exhausting than anyone wanted to challenge. Usually, my parents gave in long before things escalated. It was easier for them that way, but this time she wanted my room, not because hers was too small, not because there was any real reason. She just wanted it because mine was bigger, faced the backyard, and had been recently renovated by my grandfather before he died. I stood there staring at my clothes spilling out of half-zipped bags while she leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, already acting like she'd won. "Mom, Dad," I said, waiting for the absurdity of it to collapse under its own cruelty. Instead, my father laughed. It wasn't nervous laughter, it wasn't disbelief, it was casual, dismissive. "Now your room will be hers," he said, almost smiling. "You're an adult. Figure it out." My mother avoided my eyes entirely, pretending to fuss with folded laundry nearby. No defense, no hesitation. Just silent agreement. The strangest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how unsurprised some part of me felt, as if years of smaller wounds had quietly prepared me for this exact moment. My sister smirked like she'd finally confirmed what she'd always suspected, that I mattered least when comfort required sacrifice. I remember looking around that house, not with anger, but with sudden clarity, the framed family photos, the dining table. The staircase banister I used to slide down as a kid. It all looked different, not like home. Like evidence, I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I picked up my bags, walked out, and left behind the spare key. For the first 2 days, I stayed in a budget motel across town, the kind with stiff sheets and flickering lamps. I cried once briefly, more from humiliation than heartbreak. Then I stopped, because distance has a way of removing emotional static, and once the noise faded, certain truths became impossible to ignore. My grandfather hadn't just renovated that room for me, he had transferred ownership of the house into a trust years earlier. One my parents rarely acknowledged because discussing it meant discussing legal realities they preferred to minimize. At 25, I had become sole beneficiary after his death. My parents were allowed residence under specific conditions. Conditions my lawyer had carefully documented. Conditions that did not include unlawful eviction. For years, I'd ignored the paperwork, partly out of guilt, partly because confronting it felt too much like admitting my family dynamic was transactional. But sitting in that motel room, reading through those documents, something inside me hardened, not cruelly, just clearly. I wasn't powerless. I had simply been conditioned to act like I was. A week later, my attorney made the call, not me, him, professional, direct, unemotional. He informed my parents they were in violation of trust terms and occupancy rights. They had illegally removed the property owner from her own residence. If corrective action wasn't taken immediately, legal proceedings would begin, including removal. The shift was immediate. My phone, silent for days, erupted, voicemails, texts, pleading, my mother sobbing, my father, suddenly stripped of his certainty, sounding smaller than I'd ever heard him. "Please don't do this. We can fix this." It was a misunderstanding. Even my sister called, though her outrage had curdled into panic. "You're seriously going to destroy this family over a room?" That question stayed with me because it revealed everything, not what I was doing, what they had done. I hadn't destroyed anything. I had simply stopped absorbing the damage quietly. When I returned to the house, it wasn't triumphant. No dramatic confrontation, no revenge speech. My lawyer was present. That alone changed the atmosphere more than anger ever could. Authority has a peculiar effect on people who mistake kindness for weakness. My sister's belongings had already been removed from my room. My parents stood in the living room looking older, diminished not by punishment, but by consequence. For once, nobody laughed. My father couldn't meet my eyes. I told them I wouldn't evict them, not yet. But boundaries would be formalized. Legally, every resident agreement rewritten, every violation documented. And if they ever attempted something like this again, sentiment would no longer protect them. My mother cried harder. My sister called me heartless. Maybe to them, boundaries felt like cruelty because they'd benefited so long from my absence of them. I moved back in temporarily, but emotionally, something permanent had shifted. The house was still there, my room was still mine. But the illusion had died. I no longer mistook shared blood for shared loyalty. In the months that followed, I made arrangements to sell the property, fairly, legally, without spectacle. My parents had enough notice to relocate. My sister had to confront adulthood without inherited entitlement, and I left with something far more valuable than that room. I left with myself, not victorious, not untouched, but clear. Sometimes the deepest form of reclaiming power isn't revenge. It's refusing to remain where your dignity is treated like negotiable property.